Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can I have approval of the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Will you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We are now at announcements and recognitions. Dennis, could you please lead us with tonight's announcements?
Sure. July announcements. As summer school winds down, we want to remind families that there are still several community sites serving free breakfast and lunch throughout the end of the summer. For those location, dates, and meal times, call 361-3446 or visit the website summerfoodbeloit.org. The information can also be found conveniently through the announcements on our school district website at beloitschools.net. The first day of school this fall will be September 1st. For school day hours, registration detail, school supply lists, immunization updates, expanded busing options, and more, visit our Back to School link found under our announcements section at www.beloitschools.net. To register, students must be enrolled in school. New students may be enrolled through the district's centralized enrollment office Monday through Fridays, 8 a.m. through 3:30 p.m. or by special appointment. Fall sports will be organized soon, including at our intermediate schools. Each intermediate school will hold only one athletic code meeting for the year, but a student may attend any one of them, no matter which school they will be attending. Meetings will be held at 6 p.m. in the school gymnasium as follows: Monday, August 3rd at Aldridge, Tuesday, August 4th at Fruzen, Wednesday, August 5th at Cunningham, and Thursday, August 6th at McNeil. Those with questions may contact Chuck Sales, Athletic Director, at 361-3022. This concludes the July announcements.
Thank you, Dennis. Let's move forward then with recognitions. Melissa Badger, please.
Thank you so much. We have two recognitions tonight. One of them, our first one, Lori LaFell, could not make it tonight, so we are moving on to our second one. And we have Emily Ong and John Kaufman from Carrie Ingredients and Flavors, if they could join me at the podium, along with Janelle Maratz, our Executive Director of Business Services. We are very fortunate to have amazing business partners here in Beloit, and Carrie Ingredients and Flavors has been a huge one for our Advanced Career Education program and also for our Summer Food Service program, which Janelle will tell you a little bit more about.
I'm really excited to recognize Carrie Ingredients. They have given us outstanding support for our summer food service program. This year, they contributed $1,000 to our kickoff event. In addition, Carrie's staff raised $603.36, and that was also matched with a company donation. So their total contribution to our summer food service program was $2,206.72. And a Carrie representative also attended our kickoff event this year. So we brought in about 600 persons at our event this year at the kickoff. And it's just really a great way that we can work together with our community, our businesses, and all of our partners at a family-friendly event. This event's open to the whole community. It provides activities and a picnic. And it's a way to kick off our summer food service program and bring awareness. Last year, we served well over 40,000 meals just at the school district of Beloit. And as we work together with our other community partners, we serve well over 60,000 meals all summer. So thank you very, very much for your generous donation.
There you go. I have a token of appreciation, and I'm honored to be the one to present on behalf of the School District of Beloit Board of Education to Carrie Ingredients and Flavors in recognition of holding a successful employee drive to raise funds and generously match donations to benefit the Summer Food Service Program Awareness Campaign and Kickoff event.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to say also on behalf of the Board of Education, not only thank you for what we're recognizing you for this evening, but for your continued support through all of our programs through the whole school year. You have a huge connection to our high school and helping with our night spot and our food programs and the presence not only with your employees financially and being heroes and cheerleaders for the district is truly important to have those community partners. So thank you so much. We are now at the point on the agenda where if there are citizens or delegations that would like to speak to an item that is not posted on tonight's agenda, I'd ask that you would rise and begin to approach the podium. Once again, if there's anyone. So as you're moving forward, I have a legalese that I do have to read. So here we go. Members of the audience, the Board of Education is now at the place in the agenda where we will receive public comments from citizens or delegations on areas of interest that are not on tonight's agenda. The Board of Education will generally not respond or act on items that are not on tonight's agenda. Appropriate items will be referred to administration or one of the board's committees. Citizens wishing to speak to one of the posted items on the agenda may do so as the items are called on by the board president. While the board and the district welcome public comments, we as a board also must ask that you exercise care in your comments that relate specifically to district employees or persons connected with the school system. In order to protect the rights of these individuals and the interest of complying with open meetings laws and prior postings of items for consideration at the meeting, the board reserves the right to end comment on such topics. The use of specific names of district personnel may lead to legal liability on the part of the speaker. The board would also remind the public that the board has existing procedures in place to dispose of legitimate complaints against staff members and persons related to the system. Persons desiring to speak should come to the podium and give their name and address before beginning to speak. Each person is asked to speak no more than 3 minutes. Are there persons who wish to speak at this time?
I would like to speak. My name is Dorothy Harrell. I live on Boulder Court in Beloit, Wisconsin. I wanted to talk about academic support. There have been, to my knowledge, at least 3 new principals hired for the upcoming school year. 1 male and 2 female I'm aware of. There may be others. One of the things that concerns me is that academic leadership is important. It's important to our students, and it's important to academic achievement of the students in the district. So one of the things that I would like for the board and the personnel director, and I've already talked to Todd about this, so he's aware of my feelings about this. I hope that there's some kind of mentoring put in place for new principals for this upcoming school year, because their success means success for the students. If there's disarray within the building, if there are people who are uncertain about their roles, that makes the academic environment pretty chaotic. So I'm hoping that with these new principals, in order for them to be successful, that we put something in place so that if they have questions, if they have concerns, that they have someone that they can go to who is a support for them in their new role. And that's my concern for this evening. Thank you.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for sharing with us this evening. Is there anybody else? Let's move forward then with Superintendent's report to the board. I do apologize, Dr. Johnson cannot be with us this evening. He is under the weather, but we do anticipate that he will be back very soon, and we wish him quick healing. With that being said, we have tonight a special education update, and Ms. Pels, please.
Good evening. I am Emily Pels, Executive Director for Student Services, and I am providing a special education update to the board tonight. Just got to get my multi-devices here going. Sorry. Okay, so the first thing I would like to do is give you an overview of the staff who serve our students with disabilities in the district. And as you can see, as showing on the slide in front here, we have 6 program managers, 66 teaching staff, 15 speech and language pathologists, 4 OTs and 4 assistant OTs, 2 PTs and 2 assistant PTs. One thing that I would like to note is that staffing is a challenge for us year in, year out. Last year, if you look at teaching staff, we had to hire about a quarter of our staff was new, and this year we're looking at about a third of our teaching staff being new. So that's a constant challenge that we're battling. This slide represents our enrollment of students with disabilities. As of the 3rd Friday count, The enrollment of students with disabilities has decreased over the past 5 years, and that can be attributed to a decrease in students qualifying for special education services, dismissal from special education services, and enrolling in districts outside of Beloit, either due to moving of residents or open enrollment. This data reflects that approximately 13.3% of students enrolled in the district are students with disabilities, and the state average is 13.5%. Enrollment by primary disability. So on this slide, the disability areas that are noted are autism, cognitive disability, emotional behavioral disability, learning disability, and speech and language. We also have students in the district that are identified as hearing impaired, other health impaired, significant developmental delay, traumatic brain injury, and visually impaired. Our most prevalent disability areas are learning disability and speech and language. Those are also the two disability areas in which there has been a steady decrease over the past 5 years. Enrollment in the other disability areas have basically remained the same or steady, and there hasn't been much fluctuation either way. Enrollment by ethnicity. So 28.3% of our students with disabilities are African American. 21.1% of our students with disabilities are Hispanic. 44.5% of our students with disabilities are white. And 3.9% of our students with disabilities are 2 or more. Enrollment in each ethnic subgroup has shown a steady decrease over the past 5 years. On this slide, we will talk about enrollment by gender. Currently, 32.2% of our students with disabilities are female, and 67.8% are male. Enrollment of males with disabilities is slightly higher than the percent of all males enrolled in the district, which is 50.6%. The percent of females with disabilities enrolled in the district is slightly lower than the percent of all females enrolled in the district, which is 49.4%. Again, we can note a steady decline in enrollment for each subgroup over the past 5 years. The majority of our students with disabilities are also economically disadvantaged. 84.4% of our students with disabilities are economically disadvantaged, while 15.6% are not. The percent of students with disabilities who are economically disadvantaged is higher than the percent of all students in the district who are economically disadvantaged, which is 75.3%. Attendance rates for students with disabilities are comparable with the attendance rates of students without disabilities in the school district of Beloit. Our rates are very close to the state average as well. Students without disabilities, attendance rates are at 93%, and attendance rates for students with disabilities are at 90.2%. Here we see the 5-year trend for students with disabilities who have scored proficient or advanced proficient in reading compared to students without disabilities. Students with disabilities are performing below their non-disabled peers. And you can see the same trend for math. So here we have the 5-year trend for students with disabilities and without who have scored proficient or advanced proficient in the area of math. Graduation rates for students with disabilities are lower than rates for students without disabilities and lower than the state average for students with disabilities. However, graduation rates for students with disabilities increased 6.8% from the previous year, which shows that we are making progress towards closing the gap for students with disabilities. This slide represents indicator data, and indicator data is collected annually by the Department of Public Instruction to monitor and evaluate the district's efforts to implement the requirements of IDEA and outcomes for students with disabilities. There are 20 indicators that are organized by sections. Each indicator includes district data, the state average for each area, and rigorous targets. The data is that is highlighted in yellow are indicators in which we have met or exceeded the target set by the state. In some of these cases, we have met the target and exceeded the state average. So on this slide, the indicators that are highlighted in yellow are dropout rates and participation in state assessments for both reading and math. On this slide, the areas that are highlighted in yellow include the percentage of students served in regular education 80% or more of the time, the percentage of students attending regular EC programs and receiving services in a regular EC program, substantial growth in language and substantial growth in behavior, disproportionate in special ed and related services, disproportionate in specific disability area, and EC transition. And so just to note the disproportionality pieces, that's saying that we're not disproportionate in those two areas. There's 3 areas you can be disproportionate in. We're not disproportionate in those 2. Okay, so this year we participated in the procedure of self-compliance for indicator 4B because in the 2012 and 13 school year we were identified by DPI as having significant discrepancy by race or ethnicity in the rates of out-of-school suspensions and expulsions with students with disabilities of greater than 10 days in a school year. Criteria for being identified as having significant discrepancy include a cell size of a minimum of 4 students with disabilities for a given race or ethnicity, suspended or expelled for more than 10 days, and have a risk of that racial and ethnic subgroup greater than 2 standard deviations above the state mean. So if you look at where the number 13 is, that's the cell size of students, where I indicated above that it needs to be 4 or below. And then the percentage cannot be, or there's at risk if it's more than 2 standard deviations above the state average, or the state mean. In this process, we had to identify non-compliance by reviewing a random sample of IEPs, correct non-compliance, and review district procedures and policies to ensure future compliance. The school district of Beloit has also been identified as having disproportionality in rates of out-of-school suspensions and expulsions for students with disabilities who are African American and Hispanic. Criteria here include a minimum cell size of 2 students for a given race or ethnicity, suspended or expelled for 10 or more days, and risk for that racial or ethnic group greater than 2 standard deviations above the statewide mean. So because we have been identified, we are working closely with DPI to address our disproportionality issue. So far, we have assembled a team of required members as directed by DPI. We attended the Addressing Disproportionality Summit as directed by DPI. We conducted a needs assessment, which consisted of 23 focus areas. We developed an Addressing Disproportionality Improvement Plan, or otherwise known as ADIP, based on the results of the needs assessment, which was submitted to DPI for accountability. The ADIP, or ADIP, is a plan of intervention that will increase the effectiveness for reducing disproportionality and identify needed professional development and technical assistance. And we will participate in DPI-led activities to support the goals outlined in the ADIP. So the goals of our ADIP include implementing a district-wide program that addresses educational equity and diversity, implementing intensive intervention systems that are evidence-based in the areas of reading and math, specifically for students who qualify for special education services, implementing an intensive intervention system that is evidence-based, that responds to the social emotional needs of students, and by providing ongoing professional development that support the knowledge of school personnel and cultural differences. This year we partnered with WISPE, the Wisconsin Statewide Parent Educator Initiative, to introduce a family engagement liaison to the district. Our family engagement liaison is Beverly Osborne, and her focus is on creating partnerships with parents and educators for students with disabilities. She has 3 goals that she is working on. One is to meet all of the special education staff in the district. Another is to provide at least 1 workshop to parents with students of disabilities, and one is to create a resource packet to disseminate to families outlining support specific to special education services. And then she's also working closely with me to coordinate a monthly parent group. The school district of Beloit has a very comprehensive transition education program for students ages 18 to 21. The program is called STEPS, and it focuses on community activities, employment skills, functional and daily living skills, work-based learning, leisure activities, independent living skills, and individualized learning needs. Some of the transition services that were provided to students during this past school year include job fairs, college tours, assessments, job shadows, volunteer opportunities, employment opportunities. We were the recipient of the Transition Improvement Grant last year, and this grant focused on improving integrated community-based employment opportunities for students with intellectual disabilities. The grant required us to complete a series of activities that focused on the goal of the grant. Some of those activities included organizing a school-based team, regular collaboration with the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, the Department of Human Services, Aging and Disability Resource Center, the Promise Grant, and WISPE. We had to complete a needs assessment and develop a transition plan based off of the needs assessment results. Our goals focused on interagency collaboration, family engagement, and career awareness. We hosted a community conversation, and we hosted a Your Child Can Work Parent Night. The community conversation was held in May at the Rotary Center. It was a gathering of Beloit community stakeholders to discuss empowering youth with disabilities through employment and community involvement. 40 businesses and community members attended the event. The focus of the community conversation revolved around 2 questions. What are the barriers that prevent you from hiring students with disabilities? And how can agencies, schools, businesses, and community stakeholders collaborate to increase employment for students with disabilities in the Beloit community? Many ideas were brainstormed and will be further explored in the future as we continue this work. Your Child Can Work Parent Night was held in April at Beloit Memorial High School. The goal of the Parent Night was to inform parents of students with disabilities about the available agency resources in the community to support their child as they transition out of high school and into the workforce or post-secondary education opportunities. Parents were provided a spaghetti dinner, an informational presentation, and the opportunity to gather information from various community agencies such as DVR, ADRC, and WISPE. 23 families and students registered and attended the event. Our district was recently selected to participate in the Center on Secondary Education for Students with Autism Spectrum Disorders Partnership. This project will be implemented at Beloit Memorial High School and will focus on improving outcomes for our students who are identified with autism spectrum disorders. There is an A-team at the high school that is comprised of regular and special education teachers. This team will participate in training, coaching, and the implementation of the CSESA components. This project will support the school in implementing evidence-based practices and strategies to improve post-secondary experiences for students with ASD. Child Development Days was reintroduced to the district this year. It was supported through the Safe Schools and Healthy Students grant. It was in collaboration with Head Start, Early Head Start, the Beloit Public Library, CISA 2, WIC, Beloit Area Community Health System, and Birth to 3. It provided families the opportunity to register their children for 4K and have their children screened. The total number of children screened was 52, and 12 children were referred for assessment to the district. And we look forward to planning this event again next year. Some of the additional highlights for the 2014-15 year include FBA and BIP training, which is Functional Behavioral Assessment and Behavior Intervention Plan training for all special education and student services staff. They were all trained on how to write FBAs and BIPs. Special education staff were given the opportunity to participate in content and grade level PLCs, as well as special education specific PLCs. So that was the new component, the ability to collaborate with their department. Programming for students with significant behavioral needs in grades 6 through 8 was added to BLA to alleviate the number of students placed on homebound. Gaston implemented intensive programming for students with significant developmental and cognitive delays. These students were integrated into the general education environment when historically they would have been placed in a self-contained special education classroom. And then we also implemented DLM, which stands for Dynamic Learning Maps, which is the new alternative assessment for students with disabilities. So looking ahead, we plan to hold monthly parent group meetings, which will be run by Beverly Osborne, and will focus on important special education topics that parents need to know about. Continue to develop the continuum of service at each school level to increase the opportunities for access to learning for our students with disabilities. It's important to have a variety of special education programming options available at all the schools. Continue to develop inclusive programming. So our goal is to include students with disability to the fullest and most appropriate extent possible, and increase the opportunities for students with disabilities to be included with their peers, especially students with intellectual disabilities, and to kind of mirror that programming that's taking place at Gaston and the other elementary schools. We're going to begin the process of changing the traditional focus of IEP writing to better meet current practices. The reference is Next Generation IEPs, and the focus of Next Generation IEPs is high expectations for college and career readiness, district grade level standards, universal instruction, and functional expectations, and using data to identify present levels of academic and functional strengths. We are going to work to decrease disproportionality in discipline data through the activities outlined in our ADIP. We are going to explore the implementation of Universal Design for Learning, which is also known as UDL. It's a framework for providing multiple means of access, assessment, and engagement, and removes barriers in instruction to achieve academic and behavioral success for all. It's based on brain research, and it suggests that a one-size-fits-all approach to education is not effective. We're going to provide ongoing professional development on intensive behavior support. This is an area that our staff constantly needs support in and professional development in. And then also increase academic achievement in the areas of reading and math through intensive interventions and through intentionally addressing reading and math achievement in the IEP. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Dennis?
I don't have a question. I just want to thank you for your work in special education, and I want to publicly thank you for helping that young lady. Her parents called back and was very appreciative, and they even liked how you tried to heavily recruit her to our district. So thank you for your good work.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
John, please.
Emily, just a couple questions if I can. So,
Sure.
so when, at some point we talked about, in your presentation, you talked about test scores, right? And how we rank and do that. Help me understand, is that, you know, when I hear test scores, I think WASB, right? So everybody takes WASB. Are we talking about the WASB that everybody takes, or is this, are there
WK.
modifications for some students in this picture?
Do you mean in the data slides when we
Yeah.
were looking? Okay, yep, so that is for the state assessment that all students take. A very small percentage of students with disabilities take the alternative assessment. So, yep, that is data that's disaggregated from the whole population.
So only a small percentage of some of our students take an alternate assessment.
Correct.
Everybody takes an assessment of some sort.
Correct.
But the general special ed group takes the regular WASB just like everybody else.
Correct.
Okay. Another one for me, just a question. So just to point out, it's a good reminder for us. We often forget, I think there's one of the slides you noted that we're taking care of students until they're 21. Right?
Yes, in
That's
some
that
cases.
transition piece. It was a reminder for me. I always think we're done, right? When graduation happens, we're done, but we're not really,
No.
right? We still work with a group of students.
Yeah, many of those students meet graduation requirements and then stay with the district until they're 21 so that they can get that work-based learning.
So that's what they're doing after kind of post-ish graduation.
Yep, they're either preparing for post-secondary education or to go into the workforce.
And then one last one if you can. So and this is my own perspective. So I think about, we have students with disabilities in the district that kind of range across a wide range, right? There's some that might be minimally, if that's an appropriate word, I don't know, or significantly disabled, right? So can you help me put a line on where 900 and some people are? Is there a...
I probably can't put a line on it because it is such a spectrum. I mean, that it varies across completely. I would say that a small percentage of students with disabilities would be in that very severe range. And it's more, you can see the breakdown more in the slide where it breaks it out according to disability area. But that can even vary because you might be a student who has autism that is very, very high functioning and presents as you wouldn't even know to somebody who, you know, with autism who would be identified as a student who also has an severe intellectual disability.
Okay.
So it's very tough to say.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And Lori?
I need a primer education on how to do this. Can you clarify for me back to the disproportionality
Sure.
piece and the expulsion rate? So what you're saying is that we have a higher expulsion rate for African American students who have disabilities than the state average, or just
So,
clarify that for me.
and Hispanic students, it recognized Hispanic students too.
Okay.
So I am saying that we met the criteria to be disproportionate. And the criteria to be disproportionate is a cell size of 2 students
Okay.
and a risk of being 2 or more standard deviations above the state mean. So in some cases, we met the cell size and not the state mean qualification, but in some cases, we met both.
Okay. All right, so the liaison's part of her job will be to attempt to better reach out to those students? Is that what I'm hearing, or?
Well, I would say that our job is to create better programming to support
Right.
students' needs so they don't get to that point. And so the family engagement liaison, her main role and function would be to reach out to any family that has a student with a disability to help them either navigate the system, provide them with resources, and just to be a support.
do you see any correlation between a high absenteeism rate with those students and then more problems down the line with an expulsion?
I would
Do
say
you find that, or I'm just curious?
I haven't disaggregated the data that
Okay.
way, but I would hypothesize that there's a correlation there.
Okay, thanks.
Great presentation, and thank you for entertaining the questions. I think they helped, everybody helped clarify too. So, thank you so much, and thank you for all the time spent into bringing in all the new staff too, as we'll see personnel recommendations tonight. And as you made mention, we have a significant number of new staff. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And let's move forward then with reports to the board. Committee reports, first we have Finance, Transportation, and Property Committee. John Winkleman, please.
Thank you, Shannon. We met on the 14th. We had a number of different items on the agenda. One is to work on appointment of a Parks and Rec representative, and I think that's still in progress. No, Lori. Okay, all right. Lori's going to do that for us. Awesome. We did the minutes and reviewed purchase orders. We had Janelle brought us, along with John Emery, a conversation about insurance, kind of an overview of insurance, looking back to last year, looking forward, looking at what we've adjusted in our insurance approach, and some new ideas for decreasing risk and also hopefully decreasing premiums along the way. Specifically thinking about flood and fire and some of those kinds of in particular issues that we looked at. Janelle also brought us a conversation about master facility plan development. It was a lively conversation and a welcome conversation. It's an important piece of the puzzle as we have an obligation to manage our buildings in an appropriate way and keep them here as we move forward year after year after year. So how do we do that? We have a facility plan that needs to be in place, and that's what Janelle is moving us towards. So we had a conversation, and we're going to come back with more conversation about that as we explore options. We approved or moved forward a rental of the CTE facility. Again, it's drawing great interest from a wide variety of people, and we thank Ryan Rui for his work with that project to be able to make that be part of it. Also moved a grant that we'll see tonight for a Spotlight grant. Approved Move Forward Association and Equity Funding membership. Spent some time talking about parochial school transportation. Just a reminder that we do that. It's part of what we're obligated to do. And so we do transport students that are not just in the school district of Beloit. So that's an important part of that. We also had an opportunity to look at the unusually hazardous transportation area, something that happens annually. Janelle had sent that out and asked it to be reviewed by the Sheriff's Department. That's who looks at it for us. And they came back with some recommendations. I think one of them is to move a crossing guard a little bit and to continue to look at what their recommendations are and how we might address those. Most seem to be addressed with our regular busing approach, is what I think I walked away from. We had another approval of a purchase order for copying printing at the high school. Janelle presented budget adjustments, which we'll see tonight, and that was our meeting.
Thank you. Are there any questions for John? Seeing none, let's move on to curriculum and instruction. Nora, please.
Good evening. The Curriculum and Instruction Committee is made of 3 members. Our president is John Akem. Our vice president is Lisa Anderson-Levy, and both are on vacation tonight. I am the 3rd member, and joining us on July 14th was our new board member, Lori Enders. And in the audience is our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Karen Lang. And the reason why I bring all of that up is because at the committee meeting on July 14th, we discussed a lot of in-depth issues. And we moved on to the full board some items too that others might have questions about. So the meeting was called to order. There was approval of the agenda, approval of the minutes. Then we went on to a monthly fund development report. And then we talked about the PALS assessment report. Now the PALS assessment is done for students that are in 4K through the 2nd grade. And this is something we talked about a little bit. what does PALS stand for? Phonological Awareness Literacy Screening. And we had a full presentation on what that all entailed, but the bottom line is to understand where our 4K students in second grade or up to second graders are, so we can identify where they might need a little more help. And then we went on to talk about the National Geographic Exploring Science. We had a presentation on new textbooks. We haven't had new textbooks for either the 4th through 5th graders, or we'll go on to talk a little bit more on the 6th through 8th graders. We haven't had new textbooks for 13 years, I believe it is. And so we had quite an in-depth presentation on the NGSS standards, which is that National Geographic Exploring Science. Then we went on to bring on to the full board, which we will be voting on tonight again, is the Active Science iQuest, which stands for Investigation and Questioning Our World Through Science and Technology, I believe. And materials were presented for adoption and brought on to the to recommend to the full board, which we'll be discussing a little bit later tonight. Then we went on to adopt of the digital programming for math support, which will be coming to the full board later on this evening. We went on to talk about intermediate school students enrolled in high school course policy. This is a policy that the Policy and Personnel Committee also discussed, and the bottom line is our state law has changed a little bit that, to say that students who are taking certain math courses in 7th and 8th grade can now earn credit, but in order for them to earn credit, we have to have a policy in place, and then also they can opt out of earning credit. And I believe that is all that we discussed in the meeting, but I would invite Lori or Karen, if you have something else to add to that. If there are questions, maybe you can address them.
I just want to say thanks. It was a great way to start out as a board member. You all did a fantastic job, and it was really fun to look at the new science books, well researched out and very well presented. And I like data, so I think it'll be fun as you move through the PALs to see how that transitions year after year as you more target into that evidence. So it was a great way to start out. I appreciate it. Thanks.
I hate to put you on the spot, Norm, but I do have a couple questions, so I appreciate anyone's input too. I noticed with both the recommendations that are coming from committee tonight, the first choice is considerably more expensive than the second choice, and particularly over a third, from $90,000 to $155,000 with the 6th through 8th. Help me understand why there's such a big difference, and it was still a choice. So why should we not go with the second choice for each of these?
First, I would like to comment, and then maybe Karen, you could help explain a little bit too. There was a committee that recommended the choices that the committee move forward to the full board, and that committee looked at both options and tried to see what would be the best fit for our students. The committee for the iQuest, for instance, was made up of 6th and 7th and 8th grade teachers and high school science department chair. So they looked at both, and that's what they recommended. But Karen, do you have something else that you might like to add? I know we had a question about digital and workbooks and that sort of thing in our committee meeting.
Certainly, thank you. I appreciate the questions, and I'm happy to answer this one as well as others. The biggest difference between the first choice and the second choice in both grade levels is the ability to provide students with a hands-on inquiry science experience. So while both materials met many parts of the rubric of meeting the NGSS standards that were referenced earlier, the first choice materials really provided students with many more opportunities to really get hands-on with science. And as we look at the NGSS standards, or the next generation science standards, really leading the way for 21st century science skills, as well as the importance of STEM learning in our district. Really being able to focus on that hands-on component was an important factor for us. With doing hands-on science comes the cost of physical materials. So the second choice program did include some opportunities to do hands-on, and when I say hands-on, I mean things like experiments and inquiry-driven science and discoveries, but not nearly as many. So the biggest cost difference was really kind of came through that our desire to provide students with the hands-on experience, and those materials do cost more money.
So I appreciate that. As I'm further looking at it, I do see that they both, well, the more expensive, I hate to differentiate them, but groups text, digital, and materials all in one number, and the one that is 65,000 cheaper is 67,000 for digital plus another 23 for materials. Are we hearing then we're getting $60,000 in lab materials or more with the other? I mean, that the difference here is considerable.
So let me make sure I'm understanding your question correctly. So, I mean, the difference in the cost comes from, having more actual physical materials is kind of the biggest difference in the cost, as well as a natural tendency for different companies to charge different amounts. So yes, my first explanation kind of focused on the fact that it had more materials. I don't have a specific breakdown other than what I provided in that, but the cost, the way that the programs break down the ability to provide science materials are slightly different, the quality that they provide.
And I was wondering, because the second choice for both is the NGSS Science Tech Book, and if we're trying to achieve the NGSS standard, it made sense that maybe their tech book was the best choice, but here again, it's the cheaper choice, but not the first choice. So is it somehow subsidized since that's the standard? Maybe we can't answer that, but I found it interesting that the standard we're trying to achieve is actually published by our second choice, and they're considerably less expensive.
Very understandable question. The name of that tech book, that company chose to use NGSS in their name, but we analyzed both. Really, there were kind of three sets of materials because the second choice was available to 4.8. We analyzed all of the materials for their alignment to the next generation science standards, and we actually felt that our first choice met the standards even better than the second one. So the iQuest materials and the National Geographic materials are next generation aligned, and they have documentation and supports for all of the different standards in the NGSS standards.
Okay.
It just was not part of the name of that company.
Two more questions that I think might be easier. For the digital content, is that a once and done like a textbook, or is that something we have to pay a license for every year?
Another great question. Those both companies provide 6-year licenses. So the cost that you see in front of you today will provide instructional materials for 6 years at no additional costs. All of the both of the first choice materials do come with full digital packages that are iPad friendly, and all of those materials will continue to be updated, and we will have access to the fully updated materials for the entirety of the 6-year contract.
Thank you. And then last question that I have, I may have to ask Janelle, but you might be able to answer as well. One of the things that we really focus on with the iPads is the reduction of textbook costs. So are we within where we anticipated those numbers being, particularly if we're going for the higher priced package?
One thing I want to clarify, at least about the expectations, and then certainly if there are other comments on the iPad textbook comparison, the 6th through 8th grade books, or the 6th through 8th grade materials are 100% digital. We are purchasing hard copy teacher editions and a few workbooks to support to have an extra hard copy in the classroom, but all students will use a digital version of the textbook in the classroom. So the 6th through 8th grade is 100% relying on the digital support using their iPads. The 4th through 5th grade is an integrated model. So there are some textbook materials and some iPad materials as well. If there are any other comments on the cost, I certainly welcome those.
That just actually brought up a different question then. So
Okay.
are we saying that in 6 years, we're looking at, with option one, another 155,000 then? Because we have no books other than the teacher's editions.
The cost would not be an exact double, that exact cost replicated, because a lot of those costs include some of the materials that would remain in the buildings
Okay.
beyond. So there would be additional costs for additional textbooks in 6 years. Additional digital textbooks, but it would not be expected that it would be nearly as high as the cost presented in front of you for the full adoption of these materials.
And I apologize, I wasn't at the committee, I was actually out of state. But in past years, when we've had material adoptions and book adoptions, there's been a cart for the board to look at. Was the board able to view the different products, touch it, feel it, compare them? The committee was?
And I was going to say, I can certainly share what we had, and I can defer to the board members who were there.
Okay. And then Janelle, can you answer the question about what we've budgeted and are we within that?
Absolutely. Yes, in our budget, we've already reviewed all of the department requests to make sure that they adhered to what we talked about. In addition, I have been working with our curriculum department after these get to the point of approval to go back and sharpen the pencil more.
Excellent.
So I hope
You do that well.
I hope I can get a little more savings there. So
Wonderful. Thank you, Janelle.
you're welcome.
Thank you both. Are there any other questions? All right, thank you, Nora. Thank you. And we're right back at you, Nora, with policy and personnel.
Okay, the Policy and Personnel Committee met at the last business meeting on June 23rd for the personnel recommendations, and they were moved on to the full board. Then we met again on July 14th, and we had policies for first reading. Let's see, gotta get my notes handy here. We had policy for first reading was policy 343.6, intermediate school students enrolled in high school courses, which I explained in the curriculum committee because it started there. Basically, 7th and 8th graders may earn credit, high school credit, for courses that are taken, math courses that are taken. And in that discussion, John Winkleman brought up, will we have to pay for more teachers? Or will we have to add other full-time teachers? And it was explained that our teachers are already certified in both intermediate and high school, so that it was moved, because that was answered as it was, it's moved forward to the full board tonight. Policies for second reading include the academic support or reading materials, and student involvement for decision-making, and that it is about our student representatives. And another second reading for tonight is use of seclusion and physical restraint. Then we went on to, again, personnel recommendations. And then Mr. Kabelka gave us an update on our labor, well, he's our labor liaison update. He provided updates, and he said that there is a new law for plainclothes and retired police officers to carry weapons on school grounds, but we will not he'll bring back more information, but we're not moving forward on that at this time. And then John Acom gave us an update on our legislation, our legislative update. And he reported that the Gateway Tech Charter School proposal was out of the budget. He basically gave us an overview of what was in the budget and what was out of the budget for our state proposed budget. And then It was also clarified that students attending parochial schools utilizing vouchers will now come from our district funds, whereas last year it did not. And then John Winkleman requested that we have a conversation with our legislators regarding their interpretation of the governor's budget. So the meeting adjourned at 5:58. Any questions?
Thank you, Nora. Are there any questions? Seeing none, let's move forward then to the consent list. Is there a motion to move forward with the items that are asterisked as part of the consent list?
So move.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are now at Spotlight Grant.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Association for Equity and Funding.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unusually hazardous transportation approval.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Budget amendments.
Move approval.
Discussion? Thank you, Janelle, for bringing those forward again. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed?
Madam President, may I move approval of items F, G, and H as one?
I'll second that.
You wish to not do that?
I would prefer to do them as individuals.
That's fine. I'll move F forward.
I'll second the National Geographic Exploring Science.
Discussion? Thank you, Nora. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Active Science, grades 6 through 8, instructional materials adoption.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion? I just want to say I appreciate all the work and research that's gone into it. I'm just really having a hard time getting from the 90 to the 155 on this one, so I can't be in favor of it tonight, but I maybe if I was at the committee, I would be able to, but that will be why I will not be in favor of this purchase this evening. Other discussion?
So you did mention that it was a committee and it was department chairs and a number of people that looked at this in great detail, right?
Yes, it was. The 6th through 8th grade committee was composed of Heidi Andre from the high school, department chair of the high school, as well as representatives from the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Many of them have served as leaders in science for their schools and for the district for many years. We had some representations from other areas as well, like for example, a teacher who might be teaching ELL, but also supporting science, so different perspectives. And that was who formed the committee, as well as myself.
Right. And so, Emily, what's your thoughts on this? Support it? Okay. Thanks.
Other discussion?
Maybe the clear advantage that I saw was, one, the graphic materials between these two were just night and day, I think. I think there was also a huge discussion about the carryover and the feeling that the science teachers at the high school felt like this alternative was a much better alternative to prepare kids. Correct me if I'm hearing wrong. The other thing that I thought I heard was that the National Geographic one was more upgradable without a charge than the other alternative. Is that right? In terms of moving along, they would update your science material routinely, whereas the other one did not. Did I hear that right?
I believe all of the digital materials would be updated
Okay.
in all universally. So all of the digital materials would be updated.
All right, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Nay. Adoption of digital programming for math support.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And policy 343.6, intermediate school students enrolled in high school courses for first reading.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Policy 342.61, academic support, and 342.61, Rule 1, response to intervention framework for second reading.
I'll try again. How about J, K, and L for second reading, since we've all seen them
Excellent.
as
So we're-
one motion, unless somebody feels differently.
So adding in K and L, policy 442, student involvement in decision-making, and policy 447.1, use of seclusion and physical restraint, all as one. It's been moved and seconded? Right. Wonderful. Discussion? Dennis?
On that student involvement one, I had a constituent call. It said 2 students may be allowed to run as a team. No, it wasn't that part. So there would be 1 winner and 1 loser. And in the past, it was 3. Was it 3? And the constituent made a good point. In the past, if you had 1 winner, you had 2 losers standing there, and it wasn't so bad as to having just, it was a 10-minute discussion with the constituent. I told him I would discuss it. Nora, did you get the same call?
Yes, and I looked over the old policy, or the former policy said 3 finalists. And I really thought about that because the last 2 years we've had 2 student representatives, and I thought, well, if you had 3, then there would be 2 winners and 1 loser. So I thought, well, would it read better if it would be up to 4? Then there would be possibly 2 winners and losers. I think the big thing about this policy that really strikes me is student involvement and those students giving a presentation to their peers. And if you have too few that want to put an application in to become our student representatives, then not as many viewpoints would be heard. So I would be in favor of increasing it from 2 as an amendment.
I would second it if you did so.
Okay, somebody has to, I didn't, you and John, I think, made the,
Yeah, so Nora, you're saying to what?
and-
EMH principal will select
it says now.
3 finalists? What
3
are we
final,
saying?
that's